and pardon me if I look at my phone, I wrote my notes on my phone. I wanted to talk a little bit about the things that we were talking about last week. So we have Jacob. He's living by his in-laws. He's living there for a long time, and I was just by my in-laws now for a week and a half, and I can tell you it's somewhat stressful.
No. Never.
And...
Oh, not your in-laws.
No, but...
So we find... so he's been there for 20 years, right? 20 years. Long time.
20 years.
He was 7 years. He worked for what he thought was Rachel. He got, his father-in-law started playing with him as, he continued to do masterfully throughout the years. And he ended up with Leah. He says, you know what, I'll do Leah as well. And he married Leah and Rachel and Rachel. And he said that worked for another 7 years. And in the last 6 years, they started having kids. And there was a lot of drama, as we saw last week, or previous weeks. And now he decides that he wants to leave. But if you analyze the dialogue and the narrative that was the process that he undergoes in order to decide to leave. So what happens? The strife or the uncomfortable situation that was existing between him and his father-in-law and their arrangement, their business arrangement, kind of reached a crescendo in the beginning of chapter 31. So what happens? Jacob becomes very successful, and he hears that his brothers-in-law, Lavan's children, are not so happy. They say, Jacob has taken all that belonged to our father, and from that which belonged to our father, he amassed all this wealth. And he notices also, the following pasuk, the following verse, that Laban's disposition, that behold, it was not toward him as in earlier days. And the third verse says, and Hashem said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your native land, and I will be with you. Right. Jacob has been away for 34 years from his family. Been a long time. He's made a pretty harrowing trip. He's had lots of things that have happened. He now has 11 children. He has two wives and change, whatever you want to call the arrangement that they had, right? And the Almighty tells him it's time for you to head out. So the Almighty spoke to who? Who did the Almighty communicate this message to? To Jacob. Now he has to go convince his wives. So what happens? He tells them, very interesting. And Jacob sent and summoned Rachel and Leah to his flock, and he said to them, I have noticed that your father's disposition is not towards me as in earlier days, but the God of my father was with me. Now you have known that it was with all my might that I served your father. I worked really hard, and your father mocked me, and he changed the wage 100 times. He's constantly playing games with the compensation. But God did not permit him to harm me. And he goes through the entire history. He says that every time that his father-in-law, that Lavan, the father of his two wives, father-in-law, tried to screw him, the Almighty interfered, so to speak, and made sure that everything worked out really well. And he goes on, he says, well, speckled ones, the wages, and the speckled ones he would stipulate, right? And the ring one, every stitch and every shenanigan that Lavan tried to do, the Almighty took care of Jacob. And if you fast forward to verse number 11, and an angel of God has sent me to a dream and said, Jacob, and I said, here I am, and he said, raise your eyes.
Where are you?
I am the God of Bethel. I'm reading the entire paragraph here.
We're going backwards, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, we're just reviewing.
177 in our book, Howard.
And finally, he finished this whole dialogue by saying that God told him, get up, arise, leave this land, and return to your native land. Now imagine you get an instruction from God. God tells you, you get up, it's time to head back to Israel. That's what God tells you. So that's a slam dunk, right? God tells you to leave, you leave. There seems to be no room, no wiggle room. Right? There's no room for discussion. Right? God gives you a message. That's it.
Tell me to leave, so I could go.
Go back to Israel. Now, Jacob, he's trying to convince his wives to join on board. What does he tell them? he speaks to them for 7 verses. 7 verses are he's trying to convince them. And if you read the verses, he's telling them, I'm sorry, not 7, it's even more than that. 8 verses, from verse number 5 to verse number 13. 8 verses, the Torah dedicates 8 out of the 5,845 verses in the Torah. 8 of them are dedicated towards Jacob trying to convince his wives to go with him back to Israel. It should be very simple. If God tells you to go back to Israel, you tell your wives, I'm going back to Israel. God told me to go back to Israel. Why do we need to dedicate 8 verses? Why? Where is there any doubt? Where is there any ambiguity? God tells you to go back to Israel. You go back to Israel. Right? You want to convince your wives, you tell them, God told me to go back to Israel. He spends 7.5 verses telling them all the history at how I was always good to your dad, but he always tried to screw around with me. Right? He changed my wages 100 times. He was constantly toying with my compensation and got intervened. The whole story, just tell them, God told me to go back to Israel. Is that a decent question, a legitimate question? Yeah? What do you say? Right? It's legitimate, right? Yeah. What do you say, Howard? Right? God tells you to do something.
Well, he told Jacob. He didn't tell them.
Well, that's true. That's true. So maybe he should have.
Maybe he needs some more. Maybe they need more convincing.
Okay, so
Does
maybe.
He has to justify to them why? Well, in a sense.
You always have to
In a
justify to
sense.
your wife.
Yeah, you don't have to. That's
No, you do have to.
not in those days.
To pack up everything and
I
move
think women
on.
were very
Kinda
strong.
need to
They were not
Say
meaningless.
something.
I have a maternalistic.
kinda like
They
that
have
a
a
little bit
husband
more
and
than
father and family ties there.
Okay,
Say
so
it's-
now we hear from the rabbi. Go tell us.
No, everyone's saying legitimate. Yeah, it does seem like a very naughty situation. Your father-in-law happens to be your boss, who happens to not be so honest with you and changing your wages all the time. And anyhow, so let's look at the response. So what do they say? So Jacob now just told them earth-shattering information. Think about that. Think about your husband, right? Wakes up in the morning and tells you that God told you to move to Israel. It's a pretty earth-shattering revelation. Now he has the entire preamble of saying why it's an untenable situation here. He has that whole preamble. He says that it just became like not livable. But then he adds the fact that there was a prophecy. What do they say? Then Rachel and Leah replied. So they both said the same thing. What did they say to him? Have we then still a share and an inheritance of Father's house? Mm-hmm. You think it's so good for us here? It's also pretty miserable for us here, right? Are we not considered by him as strangers? For he has sold us and even totally consumed our money, right? But all the wealth that God has taken from him, from our father, belongs to us and our children. So now, whatever God has said to you, do. They also are employing some tactic. They also start off by saying that it's not good for us here either. We're uncomfortable with the situation as well. It's good for us to leave as well. We don't feel comfortable here either anymore. And then they finish off by saying everything that God told you to do, do.
But where is Israel right? Where is Israel here? What they're talking about? Where are they going?
What, they're heading back? They're heading west.
Okay, because his name was there actually an Israel then?
Well, the land is called the land of Israel. It has many names.
Could it be? I mean, where you think it was right where we're talking about where they live now?
The land of the biblical land. It's a question about the biblical land of Israel.
Right.
The biblical land of Israel is a little bit different than the way our Israel is shaped. A little bit different. It's a little bit more squarish. It's a little bit shorter but wider.
His name, he became Israel.
Well, Israel is a name. It's interesting to point out that Jacob has 2 names. Jacob has multiple. What's the idea of Jacob's multiple? And we spoke about this a little bit at the Bar Bat Mitzvah last week. Jacob has multiple names. Last time I spoke, whatever. Not last week. So Jacob is the perfect blend. Jacob is considered to be the ideal of the forefathers. Bechir ha'avot, right? All of Jacob's kids, right, comprise the 12 tribes of the Jewish people. He doesn't have that Esav or that Ishmael. He doesn't have that little breakaway. He doesn't have that. Hence, Jacob is, in his totality, the nation of Israel. Right? And Jacob lives a dual life. If you analyze Jacob throughout his the progression, in Genesis, you see that this is someone who has to act out a character. Right? Jacob is so honest. Right? That was the thing we learned. He's so studious. He has to engage with Lavan. He has to be wily and creative and deceptive, so to speak, to deal with Lavan. He has to learn to. That's where Jacob is acting as Israel. Jacob, as foreshadowing the Jewish people, are going to have to be very adaptive, dealing with the struggles of Lavan, right? With his father-in-law, with his brother who wants to kill him, right? Jewish people are constantly in a maelstrom. Is that the right word? I don't know.
Maelstrom.
Maelstrom. Thank you. A labyrinthine maelstrom.
That's a good one.
Nice. Of conflict.
Taken out.
Of conflict. And we'll see even a little bit later, right? Jacob has a major encounter in the beginning of the following portion. He's a major conflict with Esau. He deals with the terrible tragedy of Joseph. So we look at Jacob as being a microcosm of the Jewish people. Number one, he's the final forefather, so to speak, of the Jewish people. His children are the groups that the Jewish people are still separated by, the tribes the Jewish people are still today identified by, and the struggles and the ups and downs that he undergoes are a microcosm of what the Jewish people over the course of their history have undergone and continue to undergo as well.
So the same Israel that Jacob.
Now, with regards to
the Israel
yes, absolutely. It's even described. We have descriptions of landmarks.
Okay.
Right? We know the same mountain that Abraham and Isaac and the Akedah happened. That's the same mountain where David subsequently bought, and Solomon built a temple. And right now, where the Temple Mount, we know exactly where it is. We know some places we don't know. In the end of the book of Numbers, we have 42 different locations where the Jewish people encamped during their 40-year journey. We don't know exactly where these places are. No, we don't have landmark. We know where the Jordan River is. It's still there. We know where Jericho is. It's still there. We know where Jerusalem is. It's still there. But a lot of these places we don't know where they are. But we were given at the end of Numbers that there's a outline of the biblical Israel, and it's a little bit more truncated north-southwise on the platitudinal lines.
That's pretty good.
They're nice.
It's another
Platitudinal?
Listen to him tonight.
But it's a little bit wider, so it extends over the eastward over the Jordan. Yeah?
May I just make a comment about
Absolutely.
the Rachel and Leah thing? When I read this, and I'm just reading it again, when he tells them that he's going to leave, instead of saying something like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to leave, our father's home, what do they say? They want to know if there's going to be a share of his inheritance for them. That's pretty cold.
No,
so in other words,
what they're pointing out is that we're not wanted here either. That's what they're trying to say.
but the way that it sounds to me, it doesn't.
And
it
like
sounds
they're trying to
they
say,
don't really
do you think that we're giving up anything by leaving?
Yeah, that they don't really care.
Do you think
about
that?
leaving.
Do you think that our Father's going to leave us a big chunk of money, or have anything waiting for us? No.
So they understand who he is, basically.
Yeah,
That's
but
what
the
that's
point
what I'm
is
hearing.
that there's multiple factors
Where
here.
are you? What line is that?
This is 177, 3 lines from the bottom.
15.
14.
Leah
Then
replied-
Rachel and Leah replied, said to
Yes.
him, "Is there still for us a share in inheritance in the house of our father? Is it not that as strangers we are considered by him?" I mean, instead of saying, "Oh, wow, we have to leave here," it's like that's all they say.
Well, and then
What do
and
they
read, but
mean
read
that-
further.
Yeah.
What do they mean that he has sold us? Who sold them? They weren't sold.
Soul means like he disowned them, so to speak. That's what it means. But then, if you read verse 16, all the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. So now, whatever God has said to you, do. That is an exclamation point on this decision. So back to our original problem that we had with this whole narrative. We have a directive from God. Go to Israel. Where's Israel? It's all the way west from where they are right now. And we have the narrative telling us that Jacob is trying to convince his wives, he has 8 verses telling them, and only the last verse does he mention that God told them. The first 7 verses were telling him how it became a very difficult place for him to be, and why he's suffocating there. I have to leave. Oh, by the way, as a P.S., God told me that God told us that we have to go, and they respond similar thing. They say, what, do you think it's so good for us here? Our father disowned us, and he doesn't want us.
Waiting for you to decide to leave.
He's a crook, and they knew it.
We've been wanting to get out of here since we married.
Maybe he wanted some
Because
empathy.
he was a crook, and they knew it.
Yeah.
They knew
So
who he was.
what I think what Howard is bringing up is that I think what Jacob is really teaching, what the Torah is teaching us by telling us the story. Remember, the Torah could have just said the Torah doesn't tell us unnecessary just factoids. That's not what it's about. It's a book of lessons. I think that there's a lesson to be taken here. I think you'll see what you guys say. I think that, as we know from Abraham, hearkening back to Abraham, his 10 trials and tribulations, the Nisyonot Abraham, the first one was that he had to leave his family. Anytime you have to make a major lifestyle change, a major character change, or any change of any kind, right? Obviously, the greater the change is, the more difficult it is. But any change is difficult. And Jacob knows that I'm going to have to go tell my wives that we have to leave. We have to leave. It's not really up. It's not really room for debate.
Right.
However, what I'm going to try to do is make it easier for them. I'm going to attenuate it. I'm going to make it easier for them to do what's right. So yes, I could just say, listen, God told us to leave, we're leaving. That's really the only reason.
That'd be ugly, authoritarian.
That's not, well, it's besides for that, it's what you have to do, but it's very difficult to do. So he decided it's a very, very interesting tactic to make it easier for them. He says, listen, it's not so good for us here. Right? Your dad's playing around with me. He changed my compensation 100 times. Right? And he's always playing around with me. And then he throws down the bomb by saying that God told me to leave. What he's doing is, first, he's taking this challenge of having to do something that's right, because God said to do it, right? Even though it's difficult to do, he's taking this challenge and trying to make it smaller, trying to shrink it, trying to say, listen, following what God wants us to do is also good for us. We're not giving up so much. And how do they respond? They respond in kind. They're also trying to see or trying to lessen the challenge. They're saying, you know what? It's not so good for us here either.
But they had they couldn't say no anyway. They
True.
couldn't say, I'm staying here.
True. They couldn't.
No.
Right? But they start off by saying, this is a challenge. This is a challenge. Life is full of challenges. The way to approach it is not say, God said that's what we got to do, we got to do. What you try to do is make it easier. I think that, like, for every area of Judaism, people that are starting to adopt more practice, more observance of Judaism, right? It's a challenge. It's conflict. It's not an easy thing, Observing Shabbos. We know we have the wonderful Shabbos YouTube videos, right? But it's a lot of laws, and the real reason why we observe Shabbos. Why do we observe Shabbos? God said we gotta observe Shabbos. That's the real reason. But it's authoritarian, and it's also very difficult, right? And that's a big challenge. What we have to do is realize that Shabbos is the most beautiful mitzvah in the world. Right? Shabbos is lovely. Shabbos is pleasant. Right? You're not really giving up that much. Right? The benefits greatly outweigh what you're actually giving up. The real reason is because
What are you giving up?
well, you can't, whatever you can't do.
Yeah. You can't drive. You can't go shopping.
Right, but
Things that I used to do.
You're giving up anything. You have another day to do whatever.
That's right. That's what happens.
Well, we
Just
used to
shift it
have
all
special
over.
So,
We never had
You
it
just have to
during the week.
reorient.
so
your
the
thinking.
4 women go with him. The 2 maidservants, Rachel and Leah.
Yeah,
So, and they all bring all their children with them.
absolutely.
So
we'll see a little bit later on.
we schlep everybody there.
Absolutely. But I think that this is a very important point. And I'm going to say a statement that I believe is 100% true. I think that anything that the Torah wants. The Torah gives us lots of commandments, lots of restrictions. I don't believe that you're giving up anything by observing them. I don't believe that there's any mitzvah that you could say that this will make my life, just my physical life, worse. I don't believe so. And I think the Almighty is considered, we call him our Father. What does the Father want? The Father loves their child, wants them to have the best life possible. I think when the Torah gives us restrictions, yes, on one hand, it seems like hard to swallow. I can't eat this. I can't, like things like stuff you can't wear, stuff you can't eat, just governing every aspect of your life. I think we have to realize this point, is that in reality what God wants from us is us to be the happiest. And not just the happiest, in some spiritual realm. No, even on planet Earth, right? Olam Hazeh, this world, God wants it to be best for us. And we have to find the beauty in the mitzvot and realize the practical, tangible benefit that we're going to get. And what that does is totally shrinks the challenge. It takes the challenge and it mitigates it. Yeah, it's difficult, but you got to do it because God tells you got to do it. Whatever mitzvah it may be, whatever character improvement it may be. It's a better life if you're not always angry, if you're not always impatient. It's a better life. It's a better life. So yes, why can't you be angry? Because the Torah says you can't be angry, right? Kol ha'to'es, whoever's angry, it's tilo v'adav zar. It's as if he commits idolatry, right? That's one statement it says in Jewish literature, right? Kol ha'to'es, whoever gets angry, kol minei gehenim sholtim bo. All different kinds of torments torment him. The reason why we can't get angry is because that's what ultimately that's the only reason. But a way for us, a tactic that we can employ is the realization and integration of the reality that we're not really giving up anything. And in fact, the best way to live is the way the Almighty outlines for us in His book of instructions.
I just want to make a comment.
Sure.
I think a lot of us Jews were raised not with the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
We used it in synagogue or high holidays or Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have the experience of the Torah the way you describe it, the laws the way you observe it. So I'm just speaking for me. At this age, even though I'm much more interested in applying this to me, it's very difficult to change from how I've lived most of my life to the way that I hear you and the rest of the rabbis speak.
That's what they call
I
Baal
second.
Well,
I second.
absolutely.
And I think
It is
that really
difficult.
makes, it's slow.
Absolutely, and
It's 5 minutes.
that's the challenge.
But it
And
seems very...
and in what method are you
One
going
more
to?
thing,
Yes.
even though your brother doesn't believe in the separation of form conservative and orthodox, maybe you don't either. All this is orthodox. And
Well,
I
it's-
wasn't raised orthodox, so it's very difficult to go from whatever I had in my background to this. Just a comment.
However, if you think yours is difficult, imagine mine. It's enormously difficult.
Do they
Another
have religion
culture,
at
surrounded by Christians, part of my family Christian. How we stay Jewish is wonderful. But I don't know how. No Torah was allowed. Nothing.
But yeah, that's that. But I think that this can be said about most Jews today. Most Jews today don't have a very strong background in traditional Jewish knowledge, practice, literacy, right?
I love what you guys say, and the
But
rabbis, and
I think
I think it's something to lead up to. But
Yeah.
I don't see that, it would be great if I could convince my child to live this way. But it's a little late for me.
it's never too late. Come on,
Well, you
never
have
too
to
late.
just work on it.
Well, I'm already
You
fasting.
got to work it on.
You
Work
missed
on
that.
yourself. You
I
know.
committed-
What are you doing?
I committed to fast on,
Yom Kippur?
no. Yeah.
You mean 17 Tammuz? Did you that day?
No, in a week.
I think
9th of
4th or
Av.
5th of August. I don't know what the...
Oh, next week for the
9th of Av.
9th of Av.
I
Why?
went to a Musar class, and the rabbi who was leading it was a challenge. I said, fine.
then you'll do it. You know, it's
Why?
like everything.
No,
It's the same thing for me.
why
It's like
I don't have any trouble fasting.
There
you have
is
to, but you have to do a little bit at a time. It's
I
like
know, so
one
for
of the
me-
two
teach
major
myself to
fasts.
say blessings.
So for
Took
me, this is
a year
like
and a half.
Just I'm going to fill in some information for everyone else here overheard. There's in the Jewish calendar. There's 6 fast days. 2 of them are major and 4 of them are minor. Major ones is Yom Kippur. It's right in the
That is
Torah.
the only one I knew.
And then the minor ones are rabbinic, but they are the 9th day of the month of Av. Today's the 2nd day of Av, so it's a week from today. Is the day that the temples were destroyed.
Okay.
There were multiple
That's the first
tragedies.
temple.
First and the second one, the same day.
Same day.
Same
Okay.
day. Multiple tragedies happened on the 9th day of Av, and therefore a major fast day was instituted as a way of mourning on the one hand, and praying on the other hand, and trying to imagine life the way it was, and how our Judaism pales in comparison to the Judaism in its grandest splendor. So it's Monday night it begins, and it goes all the way to Tuesday night. It's about 24 and change, 25 hours, something like that. But I think Howard. So this is a problem. I'm saying you have lots of Jews that aren't exposed to Judaism, traditional Judaism, or any kind of Judaism for that matter. The majority of the Jews aren't exposed to any kind of Judaism. But when a Jew does get exposed, and they recognize that it's true, that it's not just a bunch of baloney. That's I think the most important thing. Once there's an intellectual understanding of this is real, like this book is actually the Word of God, and Moses actually was out signing it. We were all there. There's millions of witnesses, and this is all real. Then there arises a major conflict, a major conflict, and the ones that are able to, it's a conflict of your intellect versus your desires, or your
It's your habits.
apathy,
It's
or your habits, right, or your characteristics. Right, it's a major conflict, and it's not easy. Most people, even those that know the Torah is true, and they know it's all real, they know intellectually, they cannot seem to overcome the built-in status quo, so to speak. But the ones that do it are the bravest to obey them, and they're able to say, "Listen, I have an intellectual integrity." Their intellectual integrity and their willpower pushes them to be able to do it. But a very good tactic is saying, listen, it's a better way to live. It's a better way to live. I'll be happier, right? I'll have more meaning in my life, right? I live a more balanced life. Right? The Torah's guide to relationships are very practical. Very practical, right? And you see that relationships where an understanding of Torah is present are more successful. It's demonstrable, So yes, there's a lot of just better ways of living, and that makes the challenge a little smaller. And that's exactly what we learned from Jacob and his narrative with Rachel and Leah. Yes.
If we had had one page of a Torah, the whole family would have been killed. So we grew without it. And now, if you go to America Española, the descendants of the Sephardic, we are called the real Sephardics. That is a big deal in my family. I don't know why it's a big deal. Well, because we come from the Iberic Peninsula. But now, if you go all over there, they want to know Torah. They don't know where to start, and nobody's reaching all those millions over there. They have a lot of charlatans.
When you learn this, you can go there.
That's right.
I
I was
do
just
it.
thinking the same
I
thing.
do it every chance I
Go
get.
teach them. Go start.
Every chance I get. Another thing I do is I don't stay away from Christians or
So
anybody.
there's not any Hispanic rabbis that are down there to teach you all?
Very,
Where is
very
this?
few, and we have some that are
Nicaragua?
charlatans.
Nicaragua.
There's
No,
not
not
any.
in Nicaragua. Remember, Nicaragua is a socialist country. You have to be careful. But for instance, in Honduras, they have a very good rabbi that is an Ashkenazi, but they don't
Honduras?
like that. They don't like the Sephardics. They want.
Jews are Jews. I don't care if they're
That is the way I
Well,
see it.
yeah,
I
that's
don't
not the
care
way
how
everybody
you
looks at it
celebrate
from
anything.
culture.
For instance, I'm ridiculed by some Jews because my mezuzah is behind the door. I can't get rid of that. That is part of my heritage. That way, when I open the door for a stranger, my mezuzah is protected. Nobody knows that it's there. And while that stranger is at the house, in the old days, we kept the door open so they didn't know the mezuzah was there.
Well, that's why you do it, because you had to hide.
Exactly. But that is beautiful. But anyway, oh yeah, I am a big mouth. I do talk about it.
Maybe that's going to be your calling in the end, is to go and help
Yeah,
get things
now
going
that I'm
down there.
retired, I can
Yeah, there you go.
Turn it back to the rabbi.
go ahead.
Okay, so Jacob escapes. He takes his whole. He has 11 boys, right? He's 11 boys and a girl.
There's one girl.
Yes, Dina, exactly.
Benjamin is
And
not
we
born
will not. We did not see the end of her, by the way.
I
I'm
love
sorry,
you.
Benjamin.
Benjamin isn't born yet.
Benjamin isn't born yet, correct? And
Joseph?
Joseph was just born. Joseph, and then that directly preceded.
He said 11, so Benjamin's the last one.
Right. Now, so Jacob escapes. Rachel steals the idol. That's like a side plot here, and eventually, Lavan or Laban finds out that Jacob escaped, and he starts chasing him down, and he overtakes him, and they have this standoff. Laban has this very incredible dream. In the dream, God tells him, "Don't speak to Jacob, not good, and not bad." And sages point out here, interestingly, that why not good? Like what? Like what's wrong with Jacob or Lavan being good or saying nice things to Jacob? And we actually find this as we find another parallel to that, where right at the beginning of the next Torah portion, we see that Jacob is about to have an encounter with Esav, and he prays to God, "Save me from my brother, save me from Esav." And the sages point out there as well that Jacob was fearful of my brother, that Esav would do good things like a brother does, and he was scared of him being like Esav, who's a wild maniac. He had the same thing where he doesn't want good nor bad. He wants to be distinct. He wants to be different. He wants to be separate. And I think that for us, when we encounter invariably, but as individuals, but as a community, the Jewish people, they have interactions with the non-Jews. They have interactions with Rome, which is demonstrated by Esav. And there's two dangers inherent in that. There's the danger of them treating us like Esav, right? Bad, very poorly, right? Of them slaughtering us or mistreating us or marginalizing us. And then there's the danger of them being too friendly. And what the Torah is telling us here, that there's a distinct danger when the Jews get too friendly, you get too close to the non-Jews, there's the risk of the backlash. There's the risk of what happened in Germany. And Germany in the 19th century, was a place where the Jews were most integrated and most indistinguishable from the non-Jews and most involved in the culture and everything, right? They were beloved. They were titans of industry. They were the lawyers and doctors and all the philosophers and professors. They were it in Germany, and they were beloved, and that also is a danger. And the perfect balance is where there is interaction, but there isn't any integration. And the Jewish people remain distinct, right? They remain separate. Okay, so Laban has this dream, and eventually they have the showdown. And Laban tells him, he starts off with a threat saying, "I could do whatever I want to you, I could destroy you if I wanted to." And Jacob responds, he's like, "Why'd you leave? I wanted to give him, why'd you steal my gods?" He says, "What do you mean? I was scared that I was scared if I told you I was leaving, you would never let me go. You would take your kids away from me. Who knows what you would do to me?" And he goes looking for the idol, can't find it. And then there is a very somewhat lengthy diatribe from Jacob. This is starting from verse number 36. Everyone's got verse 36?
Did we read this guys?
Yeah, we
Yes.
read this last week. Yeah, we did. You weren't
We're
here.
only 2 pages from the end.
Yes. Then Jacob became angered, and he took up his grievance with Laban, or Lavan, right? Lavan's the Hebrew. Jacob spoke up and said to Laban, "What is my transgression? Like, what did I do wrong? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? When you rummaged through my things, what did you find from all your household objects? Set it here before my kinsman and your kinsman. Let it decide between the two of us. These 20 years that I've been with you, I don't even pronounce that word. Used. You're used and she goes never miscarried. Nor did I eat rams from your flock. I didn't steal anything. Right? I took impeccable care of your animals. That which was mangled I never bought for you. I myself would bear the loss. From me you would exact it." Jacob was so honest that if anything ever went wrong, he took responsibility. Whether it was stolen by day or stolen by night. If it was stolen, he had a full insurance policy. That's not a bad employee to have, right? Yeah. This is how it was. By day, scorch and heat consumed me, and frost by night. My sleep drifted from my eyes. He didn't stop. He was a consummate worker. Right? This is my 20 years in your household. I served you 14 for your 2 daughters. I worked really hard. And 6 for your flock. I earned it, right? I earned it. I worked 7 years for each one of your daughters. 7. 7 plus 7 is 14 years for your daughters. And 6 years for your flock. Only after 14 years of work, only then did he start earning for himself. And you, Cham, went 100 times. I was so incredibly honest. You were dishonest. Had not the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the dread of Isaac been with me, you would have surely now sent me away empty-handed. God saw my righteousness and would toil my hands, so he admonished you last night. What Jacob here does he outlines, right? He delineates all the reasons why Jacob earned what he had. I worked tirelessly. I toiled. I was the best worker. I was the most honest. I worked legitimately. I earned it. I earned my wives. I earned my keep. I earned whatever I had. How does Laban respond? Then Laban spoke up and said to Jacob,
He tries to guilt trip him.
"The daughters are my daughters. The children are my children, and the flock is my flock, and all that you see is mine." Me. What happened here? Jacob did a very good job of arguing, of presenting legitimate empirical arguments to say, I worked hard, and Laban wasn't contesting any of the reasonings, any of the rationales. He said, "No, it's all mine. The daughters are mine, the children are mine, the flock is mine, everything is mine." What happened here? Where's the disconnect? How does that even work? Like, what kind of crook? Imagine you're having a debate. And Jacob, there's an argument here. And Jacob gets up and presents very logically, detail by detail, how I worked, when I worked, for what did I work. Right? And he just lays out all the reasonings why he earned what he earned. And how does Lee respond? No. It's all mine. Without any without any basis. I think that this demonstrates, I think it's somewhat of a continuation of what we mentioned earlier. No matter how impregnable the intellect or the logic behind an argument is, Jacob's argument was incontrovertible. It was sound, clear logic. Laban didn't want to hear it. He had made up his mind earlier. He said, "These are mine." He pursued them. "I want to get back what I own." No matter how clear and coherent and cogent Jacob's arguments were, doesn't matter. Because he was so unwilling to let the intellect interfere with what he wanted, he was still able to say, "No, the daughters are mine, the children are mine, the flock is mine, everything is mine." I think that the lesson the Torah wants us to hear is that unless we are receptive to ideas or to debate or to issues, even the soundest of logic presented in the most orderly fashion, won't penetrate. Laban was predisposed towards his position, even though Jacob, step by step, presents a very clear, very sensible, very logical argument. It does not make one iota of a difference. Why? Because he was not willing to be receptive.
He was stubborn.
Well, he was stubborn,
Arrogant.
yeah, and
Unwilling to listen.
Arrogant.
exactly, and I think that
Selfish.
when we talk about, we all have this within ourselves as well. There's some times where we want something. I want it to be this way, and no matter of logic will change my mind. And that's something that we have naturally, and that's something we have to be very, very aware of.
Worst trait you can have. Arrogance.
I wouldn't say it's arrogance. I think it's.
Selfish. Lots of things. He's selfish. Yeah.
There's a lot of adjectives.
Yeah. A lot of it.
Yeah, I think. But
He could think that, well, Jacob would be nothing without me. If it weren't for me, he wouldn't have anything. So it's all his. It's all because of him. It's all me.
what do you mean? He worked really hard and he earned it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but the point is that
But
if
I paid him. So what if I change it?
if you want the result, the end result, to be something, you may just not be willing to accept any logic. And the outsider, when we look at this as an outsider, we say, wait a minute, something's wrong with Laban. But because in his mind, I'm sure he was. If you asked him, are you serious? Is this legitimate? He'd say, yeah, of course. In his mind, it's totally legitimate. But he's being blinded. He's being blinded. And he doesn't have the tools to make decisions. And I think that this, for us as well, I know that I've been in situations where you have an argument with someone, and halfway through the argument, you realize that intellectually that person is right. And you're wrong. And yet keep on arguing.
Because you don't want to look wrong.
Either you don't want to look wrong, or but that's not being fair. It's not being fair, and it's
We never said Laban was fair.
that's true. And no, but I think that we can learn. We learn from him as well. There's a lesson to be learned from Laban as well, and the Torah tells us because of this lesson, and we have to make sure that the decisions that we're making are. We have to be open-minded enough. We have to be willing to judge a situation, a scenario, an idea by the merits of that situation, scenario, or idea.
But then he changed this because he says, yet.
Oh, he says, listen, God told me. If God tells you to do something, you don't mess around.
In the next line, they wind up talking about, let's make a compass.
Yes.
They go from
So what happens? This is where we got up to last week. Let's read to the end of the parsha, and then we'll sign off for the rest of the semester. And by the way, I want to congratulate everyone here. You guys are the tough guys, the fighters that are still here standing.
Yeah, we were supposed to be done 20 weeks ago. And now we're going to start again.
Breakneck, part 1.
We love it. We love this.
And you know what? I
That's why we're
think
here.
the thing that we learned the most out of 35 breaknecks is just how much there is in there.
Yeah.
And how many times have we said, you know what? Well, let's not get too deep into this because we do,
but we do.
but we still leave much more stones uncovered.
Interesting.
Name to slow stall instead of
Breakneck, yeah.
No, but it's a breakneck, but it's into the depths. We're going really fast, but
We
going
could study-
deep instead of broad, instead of
We could
surface.
study creation for 50 years, couldn't we?
Change it to through the
Sure.
century.
Yeah, your brother said that he could spend 6 years on Genesis alone.
Absolutely.
That's what he said.
Absolutely.
The first word we can spend.
But you know what,
here.
Rabbi? You know what
I
else
never read the
happens
whole
here?
Torah. I'm never going to finish.
You won't.
Laban also tries to guilt trip him.
You read it
Oh,
every
you
week.
stole my daughters. You took this away. And
Read
Well,
it
he had a
every
lot
week.
to lose.
then I don't get any
Jacob was the best
explanation.
worker I ever had. He made him
Yes, you
rich.
did.
he,
Just
he
read
tried
the
to, he
English.
tried to guilt trip him on top of everything else. It was just terrible.
He's a
This guy
custom
was
that
so
everybody bows.
Takes you 20 minutes,
Who?
Howard. Boom.
Laban,
What do you mean? Is it
Better
you?
than
he's
waiting
the,
for the rabbi to catch up.
the
and
big guy.
He's the
Just
boss.
read
He's
every
the boss. He's the
2052
tribal
we'll
chief.
finish.
Yeah, we
And
read it
he
every week. Last week
expects
it was
everybody
very.
to do
It talked
exactly
about what's
what
going on in
he
Israel.
Yeah,
wants.
but-
There's a big
But
kahuna.
remember, a deal's a deal.
Presentation Sunday night, I'm
And a
surprised.
reality is reality. And when you have a deal with your employee,
Said, Lot said, or
He earns it. He earns it.
Yeah, but
Oh, did you go
are
to that?
just.
Rabbi John,
That's right.
You are
And
not.
he wasn't, and Jacob
he's looking for you.
had to deal with this reality. And Jacob, as we said, Jacob is the microcosm of Jewish people.
Ice cream?
Extremely diplomatic.
And you have
Yeah,
to
that
navigate
really
this
does.
very treacherous waters. Very dangerous.
Beautiful.
Yes. Okay, let's read to the end here.
We need the expert to read.
Who's that? I'll read.
Howard.
No, he reads the
He
bottom.
reads the commentary.
The commentary.
Okay, so it's only like 15. I'll read it. Okay.
But we're going to miss Howard's reading for a month.
Well,
You'll make it.
Then Laban spoke up and said to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, the children are my children. The flock is my flock, and all that you see is mine. Yet to my daughters, what could I do to them this day, or to the children whom they have borne? So now, come, let us make a covenant, I and you, and he, which is capitalized, shall be a witness between me and you." And this is something you find often in Genesis. We found it earlier with Avimelech. There comes a point in time where the Jew has a conflict with a non-Jew, and the Jew totally dominates, right? As in this, and then he says, "You know what? Maybe I could still get something. Let me get some sort of let me try to squeeze out a little bit of something out of it. You know, let me get the covenant. You know, let's try it. When we see that later on, we open the book of Joshua. You know, and there's covenants that are the peace treaties the Jews abide by years and years and years down the line. The Jews always seems to be willing to give up more for peace. Yeah.
Gee.
Like,
Really?
They gave up everything to Egypt. What are you talking about?
yeah, they gave up everything to Egypt. But the Jew says,
More important.
peace is more important. I'll give up the Sinai. I'll give legitimacy to Egypt because I would still value that.
They can't give up Gaza. This crap in Gaza. They have to keep going.
They have to take it over.
But
You don't wanna know what
I
I
think it was a really good deal. I think it was a really good deal with Egypt. You know, I think that
No, they did
since
a good deal with
1979,
No,
you know,
it's been a good deal.
it's been a good deal. And with Jordan.
But unfortunately, it's not good where it is now. But with this
You don't know
Gaza
Howard, you don't know what I say about this.
Carpet bomb. What do you say?
But a lady Obama, they used to be in the Obama administration, said that she was told by people from Qatar,
Yeah.
the Qataris, that Hamas is not a terrorist organization.
Look what they're
it's
doing in Europe.
humanitarian.
Look what they're doing in Europe.
Oh no,
They're having to
correction.
run
There's
out
a
of
lady
France
that's
now.
still in Congress,
The ones
and
that
the
can
other
leave are
lady
leaving.
said that
At least they have
Hamas
Israel
has
to
to
go
put
to.
Why now?
throw the bombs from where private places.
That's right. These people
Because
can't afford to live there. You're right.
Why-
it is such a
why
small
is there so
area
much
that the
anti-Semitism?
population with them. I believe them. I truly.
Rabbi, why is there so much anti-Semitism now? What's triggering now again?
Anti-Semitism. Yeah.
Well, but it's worse now than
another
it's
class.
If there has been any constant
It's anti-Semitism. Yeah, but
in the
it's
past
worse
2,000
now.
years, it's anti-Semitism.
But it's worse now again.
It's not worse now. It's a lot better than now than it's ever been.
We have
And you know what?
That is
And
why we
that's
hear
that's
about
the reality. And you know what? Historically, our relations with the Muslims are much, 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 much better than it's been with the Christians. So yes, and I don't think that I don't
I've
think.
never heard that before.
Oh, absolutely, of course.
for hundreds of years.
Of course,
they were
yeah.
outcasts.
You know how many
One-
hundreds and hundreds and thousands of Jewish communities were slaughtered by the Christians? The Jewish people were always a much better terms with the Muslims.
We did very well when we were under
In
the
Spain.
Muslims, when we were in Spain.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and well, historically we've always
that
done well,
time.
almost always
Yeah,
done
we
well.
flourished.
Well, either way, I don't want to get into this, but
No,
I don't think I think that conflict, as we see from our forefathers, is ever present, and there's no easy resolutions. And I think that we could say, you know what? Wouldn't it be great if we just carpet bombed them?
Yeah.
Bomb the whole thing back to the stone. They could do that.
Yeah,
The
let's
Israelis
do
could
it.
do it, but it's not really a viable option. It's not really viable.
Let's do it anyway.
It's not the way the Jewish people act. It's not a Jewish way of engaging with
Jews
problems.
defend themselves. They
So
don't
give
attack.
me there's no other solution though. There is none.
Who says there's an easy solution? There's not going to be
There's
a
none.
solution. We have to do what we can, do what's best, and do it in Jewish fashion. I don't think that you could say that let's just nuke them all.
Why not?
You can't.
Good, but I don't.
It's not the way we deal with it. Okay, let's read to the end here.
Okay, wait a minute, Rabbi, I have a question here. You started to talk about the covenant.
Yes.
But Laban is the one who's saying, let's
Yes,
make it.
and you'll find that a lot.
It wasn't
Means
Jacob instituting
once,
it, he did.
once Laban didn't come with the intention of creating a covenant.
Right,
He came to vanquish Jacob.
right.
Right, to get everything back.
And after he realizes he has no chance against Jacob, now he says, you know what, let me get something at least. And you'll see that. You'll see the very next page we're going to see Jacob is going to encounter Esav. Esav is going to come with very nefarious intentions. And he too, after Jacob skillfully disarms him, he's also going to say, oh, maybe we can be friends. Maybe we can be, right?
Yeah, right, okay. Yep.
Okay.
That's what happened, okay.
And Jacob took a stone and raised it up as a monument. And Jacob said to his brethren, gather stones. So they took stones and made a mound, and they ate there on the mound. Laban called it Yegar Sahadusa, and Jacob called it Galeed. If someone asks you what language is the Torah written in,
Aramaic.
well, the Torah is written in Hebrew.
In Hebrew, okay.
However, there are some words that are in Aramaic. Like these words, Yegar Sahadusa, are the two words in the Torah that are written in Aramaic. There are also other words in the Torah that are from other languages as well.
Can you
Like-
translate that? What does that mean?
Yegar Sahadusa means a mound of testimony, a memorial, so to speak.
So why do you suppose that was written in a different language? What would
Because
have been
Laban
the reason
said
for
that.
that?
Well, Laban said it like that, but it's a good question. It's a good question.
Well, yeah, but just because he, I mean,
He's an Aramaic.
It says in the bottom here.
Yeah, he's living in a different.
Jacob and Laban both gave it the same name. But Jacob used Hebrew. Because he wouldn't abandon the sacred son, and Laban used Aramaic.
Yeah. But it's interesting. It's an interesting thing. Very interesting.
yeah,
And we
that
know that
could
the
be
word
stuck right in there.
the word tefillin is translated as phylacteries.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, if someone didn't know what tefillin is,
I don't know what phylactery
yeah, if someone didn't know what tefillin was, and he said, oh, phylacteries, oh, yeah. Sure, it's like, it's like,
Sounds like a slippery factory.
I don't know who made up that word, like a tabernacle. Oh, a mishkan, a tabernacle. Oh, sure, yeah, of course. Which neighbor doesn't have one of those? Whatever. But the word tefillin, the Talmud tells us that tefillin is a mixture of two words, tat, pat, and they are also from other languages. Some language called Afriki, which sounds like Africa. And the Talmud recounts of Rabbi Akiva taking some sort of fact-finding mission journey to Africa to find out what a word actually meant. So he went to the locals. It's an interesting thing. I don't really know exactly what the reasons by, but the Torah is almost exclusively, but entirely exclusively in Hebrew. Okay. And Laban declared the mound as a witness between me and you today. Therefore he called his name Galeed. As for the mitzvah, because he said, may Hashem keep watch between me and you when we are out of each other's sight. If you ill-treat my daughters, or if you marry wives in addition to my daughters, then no man may be among us. But see, God is a witness between you. Okay, that's what he's demanding. Laban said to Jacob, here is the mound, and here's the monument which I have cast between me and you. The mound shall be witnessed, and the monument shall be witnessed, that I may not cross over to you past this mound, nor may you cross over to me past this mound and this monument for evil. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor judge between us, the God of their father. And Jacob swore by the dread of his father Isaac. Then Jacob slaughtered for a feast on the mountain, and he summoned his kinsmen to break bread, and they broke bread and spent the night on the mountain. Okay, so they have this wonderful agreement, this treaty, this covenant. They each pledge. They seem to cement it by this wonderful banquet, feast. And Laban awoke early in the morning. He kissed his sons and daughters and blessed them. Then Laban went and returned to his place. Laban defeated, walked home. Jacob went on his way, continued on towards Israel, and the angels of God encountered him. The angels of God, and we see that this is now, Jacob is kind of upgrading his, now that he's finally divested himself of that bad influence, right, there's automatically a step up in his spirituality. Right? Boom, boom, boom. Like the second that Laban's gone, there's this automatic upgrade in his spirituality, and we find this a lot. What the Talmud tells us is that if someone has a bad neighbor, it affects him negatively. Like your surroundings, like your company, they're going to affect you. Right? Jacob was still capable of prophecy, even when he was near Laban. But the second, the Torah tells us, the second that he left Laban, automatically he had angels accompanying him. Automatically, it was, he went up a rung in his spirituality.
Is Nahor the brother of Abraham? I don't remember who that is.
Nahor is the brother.
Laban referred
Had
to
to
the
do
god
with
of
Abraham.
Terah, the father.
Nahor is the brother of Abraham. Yes.
Okay. I don't remember hearing much about that.
Okay, so Jacob was away. Angels and God encountered him. Jacob said when he saw them, "This is a godly camp." So he called the name of the place Machanayim. Congratulations, everyone, on completion of Breakneck Part 1.
You're doing a proof series.
Yes, we'll talk about that. I wanted to just say one more thing. We find twice Jacob calls the God of Abraham, right? The God of Abraham and the dread of Isaac.
Well, I don't understand the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor. Aren't they the
Well,
same?
yes, that's
Why
true.
do they state that?
That's but we say in our tefillah, we say the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob.
Interesting, the God of Nahor is not capitalized, but the God of Abraham.
Yeah,
So are they
because Nahor wasn't exactly someone who had followed in Abraham's footsteps.
But isn't they don't
So it's interesting why.
have the same God?
Is he Lot's
No, it's clear.
father? Who is Nahor?
Nahor is he's the brother. Is he
Abraham,
Lot's?
but Lot was his nephew.
Could be.
It says Terah, T-R-A.
Terah had 3 children: Abraham,
Laban
Nahor, and
referred
what was the name
to
of the third one?
Terah.
Who was Lot's
Forgetting what's
Father. Who was Lot's father?
with a hay, right?
Yeah,
Haran.
Who
Thank
was
you.
Lot's father?
Right, Haran.
You're right. It could be.
He
And
died, and that is
I don't know.
why
Was
he went with Abraham.
and I believe that Lot was the son of Haran. I'm not sure. I don't
I
know.
know the father died, and that is why he went with Abraham, right?
Either way, I don't remember exactly which one it
I want to read
was.
you something from 53. This is in small letters.
Oh, back to his commentary.
Yes.
God of their father.
Yeah,
I don't have
God
that
with a
there.
small g.
Laban referred to the God of Terah, T-R-A-H, the father of both Abraham and Nahor. So I am all mixed up. I don't know who the God of who is anymore.
No,
I mean, the God of Abraham is our God, Hashem.
that's right. And
And the
if
God
you look
of
at
their-
Rashi, where I looked, Rashi says one word. He says the God of Abraham, Kodesh, holy, and the God of Nahor as Chol, as being not holy. Means that there's a certain spiritual element and a physical element.
And who's Terah?
Terach is the father of both Nahor and Abraham.
Oh, the human father. Okay.
Yes. But what I wanted to talk about is that the commentaries point out that Jacob had a certain... he refrained from calling... saying the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac. Instead he said the dread of Isaac. And this idea, the dread, or pachad yitzchak, the fear, the dread. And we know, the Talmud tells us, that the term, the God of a person, of an individual, is only said in 3 people. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's not said about Moses. It's not said about Joseph, Aaron, or any one of the great people that we've had. Samuel, David, none of them. It's only said on these 3 people. And I think that it's important for us as we, this is something that's part of our liturgy. We say it all the time. Right? We've always mentioned every prayer, every Amidah, we mention the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac. What is so significant about these people that these people, their relationship with God merited that we could say the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So there's many explanations. The explanation that I'm going to share is what I heard from my grandfather. And I like to say it as a way of, imagine you were granted an audience with the president or the secretary general of the UN or someone that you think is really important without getting involved in your own personal, political... Right? What would you do? You'd prepare really, really well. Right? You'd obviously make sure you look good and make sure you have your points that you want to convey organized. You rehearse and rehash exactly what state you want to be in and what exactly you want to accomplish. if you had an audience with God, imagine you knew that for an hour tomorrow you're going to be a prophet, and you want to accomplish something during that hour. How much more so? We could take that and multiply it by 1,000, and that's the kind of level of preparation that you would want to be. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were always at every time at that level. They're called the chariot of God. They were constantly, steadily, right, all the time in a state of being totally ready for an audience with God. Hence, the relationship of our forebearers, of the founding of Judaism, that they have with God is something that we have to think about as we're starting our prayer. There is this idea of being always, at every time, at every waking hour, at a state of readiness for God's presence. And the idea that we should hopefully do is that we're about to start the prayer. It's almost the first thing you say at the beginning of the prayer. The first thing, because we have to say, listen, I'm about to have somewhat of a mini audience, a mini prophecy, right? It's also, I support me to, now, sooner than later, come to some sort of readiness and some sort of spiritual clarity at the time of this interaction, so to speak, with God.
Well, Rabbi, don't you, then it's curious to me that Moses wouldn't have been included there, because in another class, when we talk about his level of prophecy versus everybody else's, he had prophecy during the day.
I had the same exact question today.
Okay.
I love the question. Excellent question.
Okay.
And especially because the Torah explicitly says about Moses that he was able to summon God whenever he wanted.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I don't know the answer.
Okay.
I had the same question.
You would think that he might
Yes.
be lumped in with those three in that regard. So,
in the Jewish hierarchy, we view Moshe as being greater than anyone, including Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah.
There was something special about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that seems like Moses didn't have. It seems like it.
Yeah.
We're told in the Talmud that you're not allowed to say about God, the God is the God of anyone aside from the three forefathers. Yes, I love the question. I had the same question myself, so therefore it's got to be a good question. Anyhow, we'll see everyone. To be continued. Congratulations on completion of Breakneck Part 1.
I enjoyed it
Can you
tremendously.
give us a preview of the